Cool. So, welcome everyone. We have a bit annoying lecture today, which was annoying for me to prepare, despite the fact that I was advocating for this lecture to be in this course. Annoying in what sense? So, data preparation and generally data analysis is super important for machine learning. But when you try to put it in a lecture, topic after topic, slide after slide, it's a lot of tiny bits and pieces that are separately like, yeah, it's annoying, it's boring, it's a pain to listen to because come on, these are such tiny things. Now the fun fact is, once this is all pretty boring and little until it is specifically about your research, because once it is ruining your results, then it's so much fun. Sometimes it is fun, in a quotation mark. Sometimes it is just fun because it is actually about what your data is hiding. So it's not about some obscure mathematical nuances of your model of some weights. Should I add another layer? Should I add some fancy regularization, something? It is about what your data set is actually about. So whether there is some physical signal or it is all ruined by the noise, or there is some features that are just not very well describing the nature of the phenomenon. So it was a little bit tricky to prepare this lecture. And originally, yesterday you got an email asking to bring your laptops today. I'm sorry, I probably lied to you. I have a feeling that we are not going to make to the coding demos today. Because as I was adding more and more slides, I realized that, okay, here it is a lot of talking, then the demo that I prepared, and it was, okay, first I thought, okay, this is 15 minutes, and I corrected, okay, you know what, if I was doing it just line by line, it would be closer to 25, so people who never done it, probably closer to 45. I'm sorry. What I think we are going to do now is the following. This talk is split into several sections. I was thinking about giving you a bit of demos that you would try on by yourself, and then we would revise together after each of these sections. I think that there is a good chance that then we won't make it to the middle of the lecture. So we're going to do it this following way. We will go through the first two sections, then we will do a break, and then I will look at the clock. If I realize that we are moving fast enough, then we will do at least the first two parts of the demo, and then whatever remains from the third part, and the remaining, no chance, there is no charger. Yeah, this is the only option. Yep. There is, but we can try. If you move here, then you will probably be able to do it. Yeah, sorry. Okay. So if we have time, then we will do some coding. If not, then either it will stay for homework, which no one will do, or we will start the next lecture with this coding exercise, because the next lecture is also delegated to myself. It is going to be about unsupervised machine learning methods, and that one is definitely going to be mostly coding, because I already have coding demos for that one, and I'm too lazy to prepare a whole slide deck on the theory, which is frankly, I do not know that much that well by myself. So just a fair disclaimer. I'm not a computer scientist. I'm an astronomer. Everything I'm talking about is self-learned, maybe with some bits and pieces from the workshops, never any systematic course. So, in theory, I shouldn't lie to you too much, but yeah, listen carefully and try to catch where I'm saying something stupid. So, what is going to be the purpose of this lecture? The task today is to figure out how your data can ruin everything, everything that you are trying to set up with some fancy machine learning algorithm. Now, in general, there are two big categories of machine learning projects, or machine learning, not projects, but like challenges that you encounter. And it is not classification and regression as traditionally split. There are this classification, but practically the classification goes like this. The first type of the projects is our algorithm produces complete garbage. How do I stop it from producing garbage? And the second category of the projects is our algorithm already performs comparably to the state of the art. How do we squeeze out additional 0.0001 improvement that will allow us to make a paper or make a history if you are working in, I don't know, Google or OpenMind or somewhere like this. So basically, these are two like extreme cases. And the stuff that we are going to talk about today is the microphone does not interact well with my glasses. Okay. Is the stuff that should help you to move your projects from category 1 to category 2. So we are going to talk about what are the common problems of the data, how to clean it, how to estimate which features, basically which measured parameters are distributed in some ugly way, which is not nice, which does not play nice with the machine learning algorithms. Going to talk a lot about plotting and stuff like this. And finally, about figuring out how to reliably estimate whether your algorithm performs well or performs poorly. Now, if you had any formal statistical course before, you will not hear anything new. Provided that you are doing some coding. If you had only theoretical course but no coding, then you will hear maybe something useful. If you've done a lot of machine learning, you probably already also know a lot of this, but maybe you do not know why it is done this way. So hopefully, if you are not very well, like deep into machine learning, you will learn something new from this. And as I said, we're going to do this in several sections. So first one is going to be about exploratory data analysis. Basically, the first thing that you do once someone dropped on you some new data set or you undug it on some obscure website with horrible interface, what are the first steps that you are doing in the first 2 days? Second part is going to be about more in-depth analysis, how different features in the data set interact with each other and with the algorithm. The third part is going to be about making a more or less robust model to which you can rely. Sometimes you are making some kind of machine learning setup, you feed it the data, and then you get perfect prediction scores, and you're looking at it and you're like, okay, this is not true. I just know that this is not true. So we are going to talk about which actual things, numbers can help you to diagnose why is it not true. And the final talk was going to be just a couple of slides about reproducibility. You figured out about reproducibility and about how to organize the data flow one after another. And once again, in between, I envisioned coding exercises, but I think that we are going to leave it to the next lecture. We'll see. So, exploratory data analysis. In short, it is about inspecting your data set in various ways to figure out how different features correspond to each other, where you have problems such as missing data or some extreme values, and how is there any kind of clusters, is there any kind of areas of the parameter space that are likely to cause problems. First thing that you are going to check, basically, as you load the data set, you are checking its size and number of features. So first of all, why are we doing it this way? Because once we are starting to do an exploratory data analysis, or once we are starting to feed things into machine learning algorithm, we usually encounter the fact that all machine learning is generally about big data sets. If you have like a few hundreds of samples or less than 5 features, chances are you don't need to try anything with machine learning. You need plain old statistics. It is a little bit funny statement because a lot of template data sets that are usually used for demonstration in the machine learning courses, they're usually small. So they usually have like, okay, maybe 30 features, but they're like few hundreds of objects. So for this kind of task, okay, you can use machine learning, but mostly it's going to be an overkill. If you have a real world task, then you have from several hundreds to millions, sometimes billions of data points of records, and each can have hundreds or thousands of features. And this is even if we are talking about simple tabular data. If we are talking about more advanced things like processing of the images or processing of the text corpus, then, I mean, if you take an image, if you remember something from the previous lecture about how we are usually using deep neural networks for the image processing, each patch of the image is going to produce a number of features. So we are taking a patch, we are convolving it with one of the kernels to determine whether there is some kind of directional edge, for example. So vertical, horizontal, whether there is gradient. We are doing it for several. So if it is color image, then at least we have RGB channels. The size of the data set and the size of the feature set is going to grow so much, then chances are you won't be able to easily load it into your memory, even into your RAM. And it is even worse if you are doing something on the GPUs, because GPUs are organized in such a way that they have small allocated memories chunks that feed information to the row of CPUs. So it is even more complicated than when you are doing things on CPU. So knowing the shape of the dataset right away gives you some information about how you are going to work with your dataset. What we are going to talk about here now, it is all assumes that you can fit your dataset in the memory easily. But if you are working with a bigger datasets, then all these preprocessing steps are usually composed into a pipeline, then put in separate set of functions classes. And then what is done is there is some data loader setup. If you ever worked with Keras or TensorFlow, then you would be familiar with this, that reads the dataset chunk by chunk, processes it chunk by chunk, and passes further on to the machine learning algorithm. So figuring out the size of the dataset is the first thing that you are going to do. Another thing why you are looking into this is sometimes you don't have an access to a GPU or to some kind of massive cluster that is feasibly going to process this dataset. Right away, if you see that the dataset is too big, you understand that one of your first tasks, not only for the computational effectiveness purposes, but generally, but okay, computational, let's say, okay, we don't have this memory, we don't have the CPUs. One of the first and most important things about data analysis and data preprocessing is dropping away as much data as possible while retaining as much information as possible. So what does it mean? You have a huge data set. You have few thousands of features. Chances are most of these features bear zero signal that is relevant to your problem. It can be some measurements from sensors. It can be some additional parameters calculated with byproduct. I mean, I'm an astronomer, so I'm basically thinking about big observation setup that has like 500 columns that say a lot of information, which I have no idea what it is about. It is different magnitudes. It is different signal to noise ratio. For my problem, it might be not relevant. So, but the tricky thing, it might be relevant. So there are funny examples that I know actually since my PhD years, that sometimes when people are doing some machine learning astronomical investigation, they discover that one of the most important features that provide the most improvement to calculation of, let's say, photometric redshifts, which is like a proxy of determining distances of the distance measurements to galaxies, so for non-astronomers. So one of the most important features in some setups and some datasets was a combination of errors of measurements of several other features. Like, why is that? Why errors are so important? Who the hell knows? I mean, interpretability is a separate problem. But the thing is that while sometimes you can look at the features and say, okay, I should try cutting them out, if you are doing a full proper trying to squeeze 0.001 improvement to get perfect results, you are usually going to do feature selection in a methodological way, like picking up features one by one, trying them on in different combinations and seeing whether they are going to work. But understanding the limitations of your computational setup is something that tells you, okay, I have to drop out like half of the features, if not more. There is another very good reason why we try to drop as many features as possible, but we will talk about it less. So This is one of the first things that you are going to do. And another thing is you are going to look at the basic statistical parameters of your setup. So first of all, missing values. If there is something, not a number in your columns, sometimes you can drop out these rows. If there is like maybe, I don't know, 0.1% of your data set that contains rows with not numbers. If you assume, if you're not investigating something super rare, then okay, you can drop these rows and you're fine. But what if half of your data set has missing numbers? You cannot just drop out the half of your data set. It will introduce a selection bias that is like crazy. I mean, that right away, your analysis isn't really credible. Another thing is, okay, what if objects that are missing values are the objects of interest to you? So you have to figure out how to deal with it. Next to it is other statistical properties. So you are going to look at the ranges in which each feature is various. What are the median and mean? What is the shape of the distribution? And from that, it will sometimes determine how you need to preprocess your data, and sometimes even which model you should use. Once again, we are going to talk about it later. Correlation analysis is once again related to the fact that whenever possible, we want to drop as much data as possible. If some features are tightly correlated, then we expect that maybe they carry the same signal. It is not always true, but it is sometimes something worth investigating. It is always worth investigating, and generally it is a good place to start when you are trying to set up some preliminary baseline model. You are selecting only one feature from the family of correlated features, and you see what kind of performance they give you. And finally, throughout this whole process and throughout everything, all your analysis, it usually relies a lot on plots. So question, why? Why cannot we just set up something purely numerical and have some reportable numbers that can fit in a nice table? So let's look at the example of basic statistics of these basic statistic numbers that we are extracting during EDA. So obvious things: minimum, maximum, median value. Why median, not mean? Because if your distribution is not Gaussian, these two are going to be very different, and especially if you have several little outliers that are somewhere far, far away at crazy numbers, mean is going to be completely stupid, unlike median. Interquantile range, interquantile interval. So basically, you are taking the value that separates lowest 25% of the data from highest 75, same symmetrical related 75%. Sometimes you use even more interquantile. I mean, in principle, you can take as many as you want, but usually it's between like Q1, Q3, maybe two more. And some of the things often are like basic features, first basic features that you are using. Standard deviation or proxies of standard deviation, because once again, standard deviation is very sensitive to outliers. Now, a little bit of an example and kind of intuition test about why these numbers aren't always good enough. So let's say you run an experiment in your laboratory. And let's say that you came up with a number of measurements and you want to report your finding in the table. So let's say that you have 100 of measurements like this, but we are taking only four examples. And you want to report your findings, but well, let's say the Journal of Awesome Applied Science, in which you really want to publish, raised the publishing fees again, and your paper is already 50 pages long, and basically you really want to not waste space on many plots, and you want to squeeze it all in one nice table that basically reports the basic properties of all your findings. So let's look at these plots, and let's think. How about which statistical parameters would be good to describe them? So take a couple of seconds and your suggestions. Ideas? Dramatic silence? Come on, come on, come on, come on. Be brave. Okay, okay. Median value, is it useful? Not really. Why? Okay, because they deviate too much. All right. What about quantiles to determine 25, this value? These ones. Okay, good. How about standard deviation? Okay, okay. What about correlation coefficient? Basically, how these two features X and Y correlate with each other? Yes? Okay. So the fun fact is, this is pretty famous example. Anscombes quartet. I think it's over like 150 years old, maybe, but I might be lying. I don't remember. So the median values for all these four datasets are exactly the same for both X and Y. Interquantile regions and basically quantiles, they are the same, absolutely the same for the first three examples, and almost the same for the last example, except for the X range. Because basically, think about it as, you can also think about it as something close to minimum value, something close to maximum value. Basically, for the first three examples, they are absolutely the same. And for the last one, only min max for the X value differs. And if you calculate a number of other statistical properties, including correlation, they are absolutely the same for all four examples. So basically, if you are reporting a data set like this with like typical statistical measurements, the reader of your paper will say, okay, wait a second, but the results are the same. I mean, you were changing a bunch of what is this? Now, fun fact is that even the best fit linear regression is going to be the same for this data set. So describe it. I mean, okay, this is carefully constructed example, but this is also easily inspectable example because it's two-dimensional. Now think about a data set that has like 100 dimensions. I mean, anything more than 3 is already a headache. When you are trying to describe something multidimensional with just few numbers, you are always going to lose information. Depending on how lucky you are, your statistical measurements are going to lie to you completely. Part of this, like this is one of the reasons why in many areas we have some weird statistical combinations that are specific to this particular task, because people are looking for something that is actually indicative of some characteristic property. But in general, no matter how complex algorithm for deriving some several numbers it is, it's not going to replace just looking at the plots or coming up with a smart way to plot multidimensional data on something that our stupid brains can consume, and looking at the differences and figuring out, okay, so these numbers that I'm getting, do they actually relevant for this setup? The fun fact is that it is also the same for the actual machine learning process, because ultimately any machine learning algorithm is a huge statistical machine. It is a very complex interpolator, very rarely extrapolator, and usually horribly wrong. But basically, it is just a very complex nonlinear function that fits multidimensional data. So we can fit a curve with a polynomial of a certain degree. And machine learning does pretty much the same, only in many dimensional space. And then it spits out a few numbers. It is always going to lie in some sense. Question is whether it is lying in such a way that it mostly separates signal from the noise, or is it lying in such a way that it misses your signal completely? So this is why, at least during the exploratory data analysis, do not rely on any smart methods. Do a lot of plotting. And there is no universal way to say, okay, which plots I should use. normally, when you are doing it, you are doing something called corner diagram. So basically, I didn't put it as an example in this presentation, but I probably should have. It is like this huge sheet of things that shows the two-dimensional scatter plots of feature one against feature two, feature one against feature, all possible combinations of features, and histogram distributions on top. If you also have several classes of objects in your dataset, then usually separate colors for these separate classes. And the first step is you're just looking at it, because I mean, yeah, okay, you can try to set up some kind of linear separator. It will lie to you somewhere. So what to look at specifically when you are looking at the plots? Some things, so I mean, machine learning in general works the best when you have nice, smooth Gaussian distributions with no long tails. I mean, okay, we all love Gaussian distributions. So in practice, you have to look whether there is a strong skewness of your distribution. So if it is not centered perfectly around certain value, whether there are heavy tails, because why it is important. The thing about a number of machine learning algorithms is that not every, but for example, for neural networks, is that they prefer the features that have large variance, that are spread more far away. Why? Because when you are computing the errors and differences, when you have a large spread of the feature, it is easier to calculate the difference between objects of different classes that are separated far away from one another. So if you have some distributions that is heavy tailed, it is going to affect the performance. It is going to get artificially more importance, artificially more weight in your algorithm. Multimodality, whether you have several distributions, we are talking about it in a second more. Outliers, once again, if you have some objects that have crazy values, they are going to kind of carry away or drag to themselves a lot of importance, or feature importance. So let's have a look at some examples. So first of all, long tail. I mean, I should have, yeah, okay. I should have remade those plots with different color of the median, but okay. Basically, if you have a longer tail distribution, then the mean and median difference is going to be stronger, and this is going to affect when you are trying to renormalize your data. If you have bimodal distribution, so look carefully at this. Originally, the range of the data is the same. It is from 0 to 1. But normally, when you are doing any kind of machine learning analysis, you are trying to normalize it. You basically try to set it up in such a way that it was centered around some value. It's actually part of the normalization, standardization. So you are trying to set up such that it was centered around certain value, normally 0, and that it had all the same variance, like sigma, roughly speaking, if it is Gaussian. But the thing is that if you are trying to, if you are doing the standardization in a simple way, we will talk about it once again in a second, then it uses the standard deviation during this process. And the standard deviation of the binomial bimodal distribution is going to be larger than the standard deviation of the Gaussian, even if the ranges of the feature are the same. So when we are doing this standardization, we are artificially squeezing the multimodal distributions, and they are going to artificially get less importance, less weight than the monomodal distribution. Even though, like, logically looking at it, okay, wait a second, but this feature carries a strong signal that we have two clusters. So it should be, like, logically, it should be important. But this is not how it works if you are doing maths blindly. Next step that is usually you're going to do is correlation analysis. Once again, as I already mentioned, the purpose is to find out whether we can drop out some features. But this is something to be used cautiously. Why? Because when we are talking about some multimodal distribution, some multidimensional distribution of the data, there is such a thing as conditional importance. Basically, some feature, when used by itself, is not going to carry any real signal. Let me think of an example. So let's say, trying to predict the country of origin from the height of the person. So in practice, if you have only this feature and maybe, I don't know, color of the hair, color of the eye, something, the intrinsic variance within each geographical population is going to completely nivellate this signal. But if you add some other feature, for example, age, then right away it says it kind of separates clearly that kids are of lower heights, older people are of lower heights. There is some age during which the height is higher. And in this case, if you keep this height parameter there, then it will turn out that, for example, I don't know, Scandinavian people are on average 5 centimeters higher. So if there is this feature, then it's going to help you to discern the country of origin or belonging to certain haplogroup if we are talking about if we are using more scientific language. So it is kind of tempting to just drop the highly correlated features, or it is tempting to try like stupid grid search on the features. Basically, let's remove one feature, let's run machine learning analysis. Is the prediction going to be better or worse? Now, it turns out that if we are removing feature one by one, we are selecting one number of features, but if we removed one feature and then 700 or 100 iterations later removing another features, in combination, they were given a strong signal. And we have no idea how to determine basically which two features we should have left. So this is why there are smarter ways to do this kind of feature removal. But there is another important reason to do correlation analysis. Sometimes the features are lying to you just as well as numbers of basic statistical properties. In real life, we are usually not like people who are collecting the features, collecting the observations, and people who are doing analysis further on this data are not the same people. So one example is, for example, medical specialists. There is some medical data set about patients that have certain diagnoses. And then we get this data set and we try to predict I don't know, the probability of the person to be cured with certain medication. And then we are feeding this data set to the algorithm and we are getting fantastic results. Like, oh my God, like literally we are predicting with this data set, we are predicting it with 100% accuracy. Oof, brilliant. And then when we start looking cautiously, we see that one particular feature is correlated strongly with the labels. So basically, we can drop out all the other features and this one column is going to predict it. And then it turns out that this one column is the number of visits to the doctor through the lifetime. Yeah, I mean, okay, if you have people who have who cannot reach the remission with certain medications, then they are going to come to the doctor again and again and again and again. Yeah, okay. So some features are having what is called label leak. So because they are kind of calculated whether using information that normally will not be available when you are doing real life analysis. So basically, okay, this is the number of visits to the doctor throughout the whole lifetime, but we are actually do not want to predict whether the person is going to have will be cured or not cured after they died, right? I mean, we want to predict it in the beginning. So either there is some information that kind of coming from the future that you won't be able to use in the real life scenario, or sometimes the problem is with the calculations of the features by itself. That kind of in some indirect way uses the information from the labels. So the correlation analysis is separate area. What is usually done during the and nothing is seen with this font size. I apologize, but this is at least this is a real life example from my work like 2 weeks ago. So basically, this is how correlation map usually looks like. When red, I mean, in this color map, and red is strong correlation, blue is strong anti-correlation, and we can see that okay, the features are. I should use the mouse. So the features are strongly correlating with themselves. I mean, thank God, otherwise it would be crazy. There are some kind of expected correlations when we are calculating correlation coefficient between similar parameters. So for example, in this scenario, this is mean colors. I mean, most of I don't know how many of you are astronomers, so it doesn't matter. Basically, colors are going to correlate with each other. But then there are some weird, stronger correlations between families. And who knows why is that? So this is something to inspect. So in this example, we don't have the correlation analysis with the target column, but if we reach the stage of the demo, then we will do it as well. Yes, so label leakage, as I already said, sometimes it is happening because we are using features that we are not going to have in real life. Sometimes it is the issue of the pre-processing. For example, another example is if the preprocessing of the data or a feature collection of the data was happening separately, so for separate classes. So for example, maybe the X-ray images of people with some serious diagnosis were inspected more carefully and the measurements were more precise. And then this kind of feature is going to carry a strong signal about the label. So yes, looking at the correlation matrix sometimes can help to detect it. And this was where we were, yes, okay, so 45 minutes, no, okay, we're skipping this for now. And we are switching to the second section. But first of all, questions? Closing in 3, 2. So we are talking about the number of features because, okay. From correlation matrix, we cannot. So number of features, we are going to talk about it a little bit more, but correlation just shows the relations between two features pairwise. So it does not say anything about the number of features in general or whether we have like good correlation, enough correlation between some features to do machine learning. This doesn't work like this. In fact, this particular matrix is only a part of a bigger one, which I didn't show because it would look just like a plate and which is completely useless. So part of the problem with this analysis is, for example, if you have a few hundreds of features, I mean, there is no feasible way to just look at it with your eyes. So usually you kind of try to detect whether you are kind of selecting the families to compare between each other, and you are trying to look at the correlations between them. Another thing is, once again, like when we are talking about exploratory data analysis, one step that I didn't add here. Normal step is set up a simple model, and then like the ones that can run under 5 minutes, and then try different basic combinations to see whether it produces intelligent results. So for example, take only the features that have correlation indexes lesser than 0.6. Is it showing any real difference? Yeah. So this is usually like that. There is no good way to determine, like automatic way to determine the optimal number of features, but there is some logic behind trying not to use too many features, and we will talk about it a little bit later. Yeah. Maybe in PCA analysis. PCA analysis is one of the things to do this, yes. But once again, PCA analysis is good only in detecting linear correlations. For example, let's say if you have 3-dimensional parameter space and you have some row in it. PCA analysis isn't going to work well on this because it is literally just trying different linear projections on the 2-dimensional space. But if you have high nonlinearity, you can use some other nonlinear methods to kind of unroll these twists and rolls. During the next lecture, we are going to experiment with this. But there is no ideal way to do this. If we are talking, once again, if we are talking about truly multidimensional space, you cannot, in general case, if it is real world scenario, you cannot just compress it into 2 or 3 dimensional space. This is why interpretability of machine learning is such a huge pain. Because, I mean, you know that you are losing something and you have no easy intuitive way to understand what the hell you are using. A lot of machine learning, like a lot of machine learning breakthrough, if you if you read about how AlphaFold was developed, so this famous algorithm for predicting the protein folding from protein sequences that was done like already probably 7 years ago, I guess. So a lot of success came from them figuring out how to represent data in a smart way, how to combine these chains of sequences of the codons into something smarter, and that was a huge part of the success. It wasn't just getting bigger model; it was figuring out how to drop out a lot of information and retain the important one. So yes, this today what I'm talking about, I'm also always using just simple table examples. When we are talking about like truly advanced machine learning, whether it is LLMs, whether it is some multimodal stuff, so basically something that combines images and text and maybe, who knows, time series data, then those things, I mean, you have to derive some twisted ways into how to make it work. But the principles are still there. You want to drop as much noise as possible. You want to reduce the parameter space as much as possible because it is easier both for algorithms and for humans. And then you want to keep the features that are physically meaningful. First of all, because it simplifies the life for the algorithm. But second, it is simply because then we can kind of understand what the algorithm is doing, and then whether it makes sense or whether it is detecting something like a label hidden somewhere in the measurement metadata. So yes, we are skipping this and we are moving to the features. So I already talked about features a lot. Now we are moving more strategically to say what to do with the problems that we detected during our exploratory analysis. So let's say you got a data set, and let's say you discovered that you have column A that has 20% of the rows have missing value, so not a number, no measurements. And then there is column B that have 5% of the rows that have not a numbers. Question: what do you do with these things? So one option is just to drop the data that has missing values. If it is like 5% or 1%, and if you have a lot of big data set, and these data points that have these missing values, they are not of some unique rare class that you want to catch at any cost, then you can just probably drop it. Okay, this is done pretty often. There is no harm in it. If the column is something that you logically do not expect to be important, sometimes you can drop this column. So, for example, I don't know, we are classifying Asian elephants from African elephants. This is one of the real world examples because it's very funny. They are pretty similar, and the main discriminatory feature is the size of the ears. So you have to know where to look if you are shown some pictures. I should have put them there. So basically, okay, we're trying to classify elephants, African ones from Asian ones. And the feature that is missing values is, let me think about it. How many kilograms of carrots those elephants eat? And sometimes we have this information, sometimes not. I mean, in general, it can be a discriminative feature. Maybe Asian elephants really love carrots, but yeah, it's probably, I mean, it is kind of shady feature because first of all, do they have the same access to these carrots? Is it really something that we can use in the wild and not in the zoo? And if it has missing values, okay, we're just getting rid of this column. good that we catched it due to the missing values and didn't put it into our analysis. But sometimes we cannot just drop the data. Sometimes the column that has the missing values is really important. I mean, once again, for me, it is easier to come up with an example from astronomy because this is kind of context dependent. But okay, when we are trying to classify galaxies, the distance to those galaxies is actually important because we know that at different stages of universe evolution, we had either more elliptical galaxies or more spiral galaxies. So spiral galaxies, with time, they evolved into elliptical galaxies. Okay, distance is actually important, and it is often missing because it's not that easy to determine a distance to something that is like half universe from you. So what do we do with this feature? Do we just drop out? No, it is important. Do we just kind of replace it with some value? Well, usually yes. But then question comes, how do we fill in those gaps in the data? So one common option is just replace it. It is either mean or median value. It is like a working solution, but not always good because if once again we have a lot of these gaps and this feature is really important, then we are essentially lowering the signal in this feature. Not the best solution. Another option that we can do is to do context-dependent filling. So, for example, we have once again multidimensional space, and we can find the neighbors of the object with missing data in terms of all the other features. So, for example, we know that this galaxy has redness feature value like in one part of the, actually I probably should just try to draw, okay, never mind, we will imagine it. I don't want to open the box of the cranion. Okay, so let's say we have three-dimensional parameter space. On 2 dimensions, some galaxies, 2 features for which we have measurements always. And we can look at where the galaxies with emission values are located. We can find the closest neighbors of this missing value galaxy. When we can look at the this distance parameter for these neighbors, and we can take the average. So kind of we believe that if an object has features, has 5 features that are similar to the neighbors, then the 6th feature is probably also similar. Not always true, but often this is like the best that we can do. So depending on how important this feature, you can use either one or another, or you can try to do some domain-specific modeling and then derive, if we are talking, for example, physical parameters, we can derive those physical parameters from some complex model. Problem is that missing values, it is important to keep in mind why those values are missing. So if we're talking about observations, whether astronomical, meteorological, something like that, sometimes the values are missing because the measurements couldn't have been taken on that night. Maybe it was cloudy. Or maybe if it's climatology, maybe the amount of rain was actually, maybe the amount of rain was normal, but maybe it randomly carried away the sensor that was measuring the speed of wind. Okay, so this is random. This is fine. But what if it is a climate measurement, and the reason why the value is missing is because the rain was so strong that it just overflew your measurement vessel, and then it was like, okay, we cannot measure it because this vessel in which we were gathering the water, it was just flew away because the rain was too strong. Then the smart thing that you can do is actually replace your missing value, but not with the median value, but with the maximum value. So one of the things you can do with missing value is to figure out why they are missing and try to replace it with a reasonable thing. So once again, this is something that you determine during initial data analysis and then decide, okay, what the hell do we do with it? Similarly, we have to deal with outliers, because if you remember the plots that I showed earlier, if we have some number of objects that are in some crazy 100 something values, then they will screw your normalization seriously, and depending on the algorithms, the result can be ruined as well. So one thing, you can drop out those outliers at all. But what if they are physically important to you? Is it right? Yes. Okay. You can cap their values, once again, replacing with min max. Or sometimes what makes sense is to split your analysis in two parts. One is outlier detection, and you are treating them separately. And the rest is the analysis on the main bulk of the data. And if you need to do some classification, you are basically doing the classification on the overdense region of the parameter space, and few outliers that are apart, you are dealing with them separately, maybe even looking at them personally, because maybe they are scientifically interesting. Finally, there are better ways to scale the data, and there are models that are not that sensitive to this kind of issues. So, for example, outliers in the distribution are usually a big problem for neural networks, but for decision trees, not so much, because they are not distance based. So they do not try to sum any kind of distances in the parameter space. They're just looking, okay, I have cluster of class 1 here, I have cluster of class 2 here. I will just draw a line, and then I will once again look at the separated part. For this kind of analysis, this is not a problem if you have some crazy values somewhere. How to transform the data when you have some weird distributions, we are talking in a second. Yeah, in the next slide. So let me check. What? Okay. Yes, scaling, normalization. So when we have multidimensional space, depending on the algorithm, so I'm thinking about whether I can make another big and improved statement to say that machine learning algorithms can be separated into distance-based and non-distance-based. Probably not, because there are much more classes of these algorithms, but a lot of machine learning algorithms, in particular neural network-based of all kinds, they are using distances as one of the key principles into how to deal with the data. If you remember the previous lectures, we had this funny equation for the single perceptron, which is weights, which is a matrix, multiplied by x, which is either a matrix or sometimes a vector, like feature vector, and then plus bias, and then some activation function, blah, blah, blah. But basically, we are using simple linear equation to calculate how to transform the feature vector into some output vector that highlights the difference between classes. So this part, when we multiply the weight by the features, this is, let's say that we have only one weight, v, and we multiply it by vector. And then in the vector, in the original data, we have elephant ears that are measured in centimeters, and elephant weight that is measured in tonnes. So in hundreds of kilograms. No, 100 of kilograms is centner, so thousands of kilograms. Complicated. So we have one feature that is ranging from 20 to 60, and another that is ranging from 0.5 to 1.5. And then we're multiplying these values with this weight, and then we're passing it on and on. Basically, when you're multiplying the weight by these numbers, one row is always going to be once again, somewhere in the limits from 0.5 to 0 to 1.5. A little bit scaled, but the same order. And then another is going to be hundreds or thousands of order of magnitude larger. And then when you are calculating the error, you are essentially just taking the difference between the feature like transformed and the some ideal value. the larger the scale of your features, the larger is going to be the difference. So maybe this weight of the elephant does not carry that much importance, or the length of the ears does not carry that much importance. But just because it is in a different scale, the difference is going to be larger, and it is going to give a larger fraction of the error, and then the algorithm is going to be focusing on this feature that has larger absolute values. Not good. What we are usually doing, once again, we are scaling the features independently. So for each feature, we are taking the minimum and max value, and we are subtracting the mean value, we are dividing on the range, and we are rescaling this from 0 to 1. So each feature, it is only the relative value. And then each feature has the same basic baseline importance, the same baseline weight. And then when we are trying to calculate the differences between predicted values and the real values, all the differences are of the same scale. So, I actually put the elephant example here. Okay, fine. Second thing that we are doing is normalization. Once again, ideally, we would have all the features that are distributed on the Gaussian, but in practice, in real life, this is not what we have. So what we are usually doing is we are trying to move the distribution to be centered around zero value and to have the same variance. So once again, in order to be able to compare these features meaningfully. So in reality, let's say that once again, we have an example where we have some almost Gaussian distribution and we have some bimodal distribution. Okay, fine. But let's pay attention to this little bit. So once again, the absolute range, so this is either already scaled, or maybe originally it was like this. The range of the features is the same. We have minimum values around 0, we have maximum values around 1. So pay attention to this tiny island of outliers. So when we are trying to normalize things blindly, this is what we are going to get. We are going to squeeze those things into this tiny range, and then those outliers are going to have so crazy values that they are going to ruin everything. This is what is happening when we are using normal standardization using the standard deviation. Once again, standard deviation is horrible when we are dealing with outliers. This is why, while min-max scaling is kind of a usual thing to do, when we are doing the normalization, sometimes we are using not this default formula, but robust normalization. So we are not paying attention to the tails of the distribution. Instead, we are using the quantiles. So Q2, which is essentially the median value, and then this 75 and 25 percentiles, which solves issues for a lot of heavy-tailed or highly skewed distributions, but once again, not always. So 90% cases, robust normalization with min-max scaling is enough. The remaining 10% of the cases, you have to really, once again, keep a look at the distributions, because if they are highly multimodal, if there are big gaps, then the distribution can ruin even this. And then sometimes you have to come up with some smarter normalization. Next thing that we are doing is we are transforming features. This is called feature engineering. Sometimes we are transforming existing features, sometimes we invent completely new one. And once again, as I said, for advanced tasks, for like really cool examples of machine learning, a lot of advancement is coming up with new, smarter features. So obvious way of feature engineering is using transformation. Most common are logarithmic and sometimes exponential transformation that kind of even out the distribution. So basically, they give more weight to the center of the distribution, and they are compressing these long, heavy tails. So basically, the algorithm is learning to not overfit. So it knows not to try to separate all the separate classes here. It kind of more evenly values all the data points distributed across this distribution. Other things that we are doing depending on the cases. So once again, in astronomy, an obvious example is going the transformation from fluxes to magnitudes, which is, by the way, effectively logarithmic transformation, or sometimes taking the differences between magnitudes to get the colors. Because once again, in astronomy, what we are really interested and what carries the most signal is not the absolute values of the brightness, which depends on the distances to the object, but the difference between brightnesses, because it is essentially a proxy for the shape of the spectra of an object. I imagine that probably, in some laboratory physics, science, it is easier because you actually know the distance to the object, so absolute values actually make difference. But still, okay. So trying to combine features, why it is also useful? Because if your combined feature, either difference or ratio, or sometimes combination of several features, is still carrying the necessary information, then instead of x features, you right away come down to x divided by 2 features, which is good for a number of reasons. Once again, curse of dimensionality, I didn't mention it yet. Yeah, okay, here it is. So, what time is it? Okay. Curse of dimensionality. So, once again, a lot of algorithms rely on distances in parameter space to calculate whether the objects are far enough from each other, and if they are far enough from each other, then probably they are not very similar, especially if the classes are different, then we are doing the split, we are learning that, okay, this area of parameter space belongs to one class, this area of parameter space belongs to another class, and the larger the distance between them, the easier our life is. But the thing is that the distances behave really weirdly when we are going from lower number of dimensions to higher number of dimensions. I mean, if you think about traditional Euclidean distance, let's say one dimensional. We have one point located at 0, another point located at 1. The distance is 1. Okay, 1 minus 0, fine. This is still the method I can perform reliably. Two-dimensional space. This is Euclidean distance as we know it from the school. So it is 1 minus 0 squared plus 1 minus 0 squared and square. Okay, also fine. 1.4 something. Three-dimensional space is going to be 1 squared plus 1, so 3, and once again, degree. The thing is that the distances, the higher it is, so pay attention once again to what happened. When we went from 1 dimension to 2 dimension, we went from the distance 1, when the distance was the same on each axis, to absolute distance 1.4. When it's going to be a 3-dimensional space, this distance is going to grow even further. Basically, as we increase the dimensionality of the problem, the distances, when the same distances are remaining on each axis, the absolute distance is going to grow, and it's going to grow fast. Meaning that in high-dimensional space, if the distribution of the data points is uniform, the higher the dimension, the farther away in absolute terms the data points are going to be from each other. Basically, most of the high-dimensional space is empty. And in practice, it means that the differences between minimal distance, difference between minimal distance and between maximum distances is going to shrink as well. On practice, it means that till a certain point, as we increase the number of features, the performance, I mean, if the features aren't completely stupid, the performance of an algorithm is going to grow. But then, as the number of features is growing, the calculation of the distances, once again, the distances are growing larger, and it becomes harder and harder to, the difference between minimum and maximum distances is going to be shrinking more and more. So basically, distances, all distances are going to be approximately the same in the absolute values, meaning that the algorithm is going to struggle more and more in terms of trying to find a way whether the objects are really close to each other, or they are somewhere on the boundary of the decision region. So this is called curse of dimensionality. And basically, yeah, same number of objects distributed on the another option how to think about it. Thinking about the volume. So we are distributing the same number of objects either on volume that is squared of the one, or at least some absolute measurements, or cubic value, or fourth degree or fifth degree. So basically, volume grows faster than the linear distance. So yes, this is the reason why generally it is strongly preferable to have less features, and the general kind of like rule of thumb from old times is that you need to have at least 5 times more data samples than features. But this rule isn't always applicable because once again it depends on the data set, and sometimes even in the high dimensional space, your objects, your data points are located on some manifold that is effectively two-dimensional. Then the problem is significantly simpler. But if you have all your objects located on a smaller dimensionality manifold, then you have to find a way to extract this manifold and drop away all the features. So, yes, another practical issue. When we're talking about how a machine learning algorithm can be mistaken, there are several types of errors. One type of error is bias. So basically how far away, basically all the predictions are approximately in the same center. So let's say we're trying to predict certain class. All the predictions are tightly located together. The probability, let's say, of an object to belong to a certain class, they're all approximately the same, but it is really far away from the target value. This is called bias. So basically, the algorithm correctly determines that the objects are similar, but they fail to recognize the absolute value where in parameter space those objects, the mapping between the localizations of the parameter space and the target values. Another problem is high variance. Basically, the predictions are centered around the correct values, but the spread is so large that the actual error is not very good. It's just unfeasible. And turns out that these two types of errors also tightly correlate with the parameters of the model and parameters of the data set. If we have, so there was, I don't remember who was joking about it. Probably someone remembers better than me, that if you have the polynomial of third degree, then you can describe an elephant, and elephants are apparently the theme of today's lecture. And if I have 4-degree polynomials, and I can make it wiggle its tail or something like that. I have to, okay. Don't remember the details from the top of my head. And I wouldn't bet whether it was 3rd-degree polynomial or 4th-degree polynomial or something. But basically, if you have a function complex enough, you can fit literally anything. It will just fit every little wiggle, every little noise, and then you will have perfect description of every data points and zero generalizing prediction, because it essentially just learns the noise. Then you have a new data point that is not, of course, lying on this perfectly detailed curve. And then, okay, the error is huge, so the usefulness of this prediction is approximately 0. So if you have really large model with a lot of parameters, it is once again pretty much the equivalent of super complicated polynomial. I mean, sum of polynomials with some activation function, which is even worse. So if you have only a few data points and a lot of parameters of the model will learn perfectly how to create this curve that will ideally describe all the data points you showed it, but it will have zero physical knowledge. It will have zero generalization, and the predictions it will be making only for this curve. And if in real life, when you have real noise, then it will be completely off the curve. The real prediction, the real value, not prediction. On the other hand, if you have smaller model, then in general, it does not have parameters to describe all those little details. But if the number of parameters is not enough, then it will, I mean, in the most simple case, you have only two parameters, which is once again weight and bias. So coefficient to multiply and coefficient to add. And then it will fit a straight line. So generalization is, I mean, depends. If you have some weird shapes, then the generalization is also going to be good, but at least it is predicting, it's going to predict the trend correctly. But of course, it's not going to predict any complicated shapes. So basically, when you are trying to set up a machine learning model to your task, you have to decide how many parameters my model should have, taking into account the number of the objects I have and the number of the parameters I have. And there is a trade-off, because if we have few objects with a lot of parameters and a model with enough parameters, but a lot of features, and a model with enough parameters to memorize all those features, it will overfit like crazy. It will give you a perfect result on your test, on your train sample. But when you show it new data, it will predict complete garbage. On the other hand, if you don't have enough features, then there is not enough information to make any prediction. So yeah, when you have real life project, you have to decide this balance, and there is no universal way. Generally, what is done is, okay, we are feeding some high number of features. We are training this, we are looking at the performance on the data set on which the model was trained. Then we are looking at the performance on the new data set. If the difference is huge, okay, the model overfitted. We need to either decrease the number of features or decrease the complexity of the model, or both, usually both. So yes, this is usually experimentation. There is no universal way. I mean, obviously, there is some general logic, because if you have highly noisy data set, then obviously, if this is variance, that the variance, there is large variance of the features, but we understand that this variance is probably non-meaningful. If we have large measurement errors, then okay, we do not want to fit every data point. So some degree of error is something that we want, because we want our model to not try to learn every little noise. So yeah, the higher variance of your features, the less features you want, actually. So yes, we're talking about features. How do we get rid of the extras that we have? So the idea is we want to reduce the variance, we want to remove the noise and to keep the signal, and we want to deal with the dimensionality of the data set, especially if we are using something like neural network, because neural networks are sensitive to density. Not only them, clustering algorithms, depending on the nature of the clustering, if they're using distance metrics, yes, they also have problems with this kind of stuff. So first method that we already seen is just drop out the features that have high correlations with other features. Good initial try. Sometimes doesn't work if features are kind of related. Like if two features together produce a meaningful new feature. But in this case, trying to combine them is actually a good solution. If you can decide which features to combine. Another is greedy selection. So, okay, we are running our algorithm on all features, then removing one, then removing another. Or if we are computationally, if we are more interested in doing this quickly and not doing it cautiously, then we start with the core of, I don't know, 5 features, like the logical ones that we can assume that they are going to have meaning, and then we are adding one feature after another. Obviously, if you have few hundreds of features, then it is a grid search with of a size of crazy, and then you're going to run out of breath before you try all the combinations. Some algorithms provide you with the feature importance values. For example, decision tree based methods, ensemble methods, in fact, they naturally calculate this feature importance. Basically, I don't think on the previous lectures we did not talk about decision trees, right? No, okay. So how decision trees work? In the simplest case, we have a data set, and we have an algorithm that takes one feature, like some tree, takes a feature and looks, okay, we have class 1, class 2. Is there a value by which I can separate the value on this one feature, with which I can separate the data set into subsets in such a way that they had the best purity of each class. So we are trying different values of this feature. Let me think for an example. Okay, let's go with height of the person, and we are trying to predict their age this time. So we measured the height of a bunch of people, and we are trying, okay, if I do the split at 165 centimeters, does it mean that people who have lesser heights, who are shorter, that they are younger? Almost all they are younger than 18 years old, and those they are taller, that they are mostly older than 70. Probably 165 isn't the best. What if we take 150 centimeters or 167 centimeters? So we are finding this value, and we are splitting these data sets. Then we are taking the second feature. I don't know, the number of money, the amount of money in the wallet. Once again, we are evaluating this value in such an order that the split was the purest, that people on one side of this decision boundary were mostly belonging to class A, and on another side of the decision boundary to class B. Basically, what we come up with is the chain of these splitting decisions that kind of produce a tree. So the higher level decisions were splitting the data set into. The next, this subset, we are once again splitting the two, trying to isolate the members, the data points that have different classes than the majority of the class. And we are going in such a way sequentially. And in the process, we are analyzing all the features, we are iterating through the features, and we find the features that give us the best separating strengths of this decision. So for example, some feature has a completely random distribution that has no correlation at all with the age. Then this feature, no matter how we shift this decision boundary, it doesn't change anything. So this feature is not important, and we are never using it in any of the decisions. So decision trees, when they are doing this sequentially, they are memorizing which features were used for making a decision. And this number, if we are normally, I mean, not normally, but these days often, we combine a lot of decision trees, which are like separately, they are not very strong predictors. This is a very like crude and rough algorithm. But when we are combining a lot of these predictors, in some, like a lot of people that are shouting answer, what is the value of pi? I mean, generally someone will say 314, someone will say 4, someone will say no idea, but in general you will hear 314, 15 something, I do not remember further. Basically, a lot of these weak predictions will cluster around the correct prediction. The same thing happening with the random forest, so random combination of a lot of random trees. So when we have a number of these predictors, each memorizes which features they used, and then we can just calculate in what percentage of the decisions these features was meaningful. And this serves as a proxy for the feature importance. So one thing that can be used, okay, this was quite a diversion path to the using feature importance, but basically we can use this to drop or to keep some of the features. Finally, last method, I mean, not last, but last here, is doing the conditional permutation. So basically, we freeze all the features and we slightly change the values, like add the noise to one given feature, and we see whether it changes the performance or not. So still all features are there. We are slightly ruining one of the features, and we see whether our algorithm actually relies on this feature to make predictions or not, whether it is improving something for the whole bunch of features or not. So yes, not the only feature selections methods, because there is a ton of them, but kind of the main list. And we went to the, okay, so 1441. So we still have like 1 hour, 20 minutes, correct? About. Okay. Let's pause here. Let's do a break for 15 minutes. 15 minutes. And then we will reconvene. And then we will probably go through the rest of the slides and try to do as much of the demo as possible. Okay. Okay. So in 15 minutes, let's say 3:55. Okay, let me check whether the sound is on. Yes, some sound is on, so we can resume. Let me hide this. Okay, so we still have 1 hour and maybe 15 minutes, so hopefully we'll have time to at least look at the demo and maybe even play with it by ourselves. So, but first let's quickly go through the section 3. It is smaller than the previous two, or at least I think so. And it's all about what do you use when you want to make sure that your model actually reasonable, that it makes sense, and that the performance metric, the way you evaluate how well it handles your task, is actually relevant for your task. It does not report any some kind of random number that maybe makes sense in some publications on other tasks, but doesn't really important for your science. So first of all, some best practices of doing machine learning. You should never try to evaluate the performance on the same data as those on which you learned. You trained your model. Why? Oh, you probably at this point already figured out that, okay, if we have really complex model, it will learn basically anything, even if you pass it a bunch of quasi-noise features. But then when you are presented with real data, with the new data, it will produce complete garbage because it didn't actually learn the signal from the noise. It just memorized each combination of the numbers that are present in the data set on which you trained it. So when you have some kind of data set, you are always splitting it on several parts. And the common approach is to split it into 3 parts: train, validation, and test. So traditionally it's 60 to 20 to 20, but it can depend on what kind of size of the data set do you have. Sometimes you have so few objects that trying to split it into this kind of thing. I mean, if you retain 40% of the sample, then you are left with too few objects to actually train your model. And then you have to figure out how to deal with this in some intelligent way. But generally, 3-way split, train data set is the one that you use to train your model, the one that you feed to the algorithm. The validation is the data set that is used to play with the model parameters. So basically, when you are changing the number of neurons between in some of the layers of your deep neural network, or the number of trees in the random forest, or some parameter like learning rate. So basically, whether your model will try to improve to adjust the weights based on the error really rapidly or really carefully. So when you are playing with those parameters, you are testing the performance of the result on this validation set. And finally, the test set is the one that you do not touch under any circumstances unless you are finally writing the paper. So this is the honest result which you didn't use to fine-tune the model parameters, and this is the result like the novel data that you are presenting. Now, in reality, you have to realize that if you are presented with this originally with the whole data set, chances are that it was already somehow homogenized. So once again, someone who was preparing the features before they ended up in your hands, someone already dropped out some really annoying data points that will totally screw up the result in real life. Maybe someone was pre-processing the things in one settings and then it will be applied for some other conditions in some different hospitals where there is a different X-ray machine, and then it will be really different. So there is like perfect test set is application of your model in real life. Usually we don't have this luxury, so we are taking some bit of the sample just for testing. Important notice is if you ever had a look at the kind of machine learning pipelines, you could have noticed that all this pre-processing about which we were talking, like scaling, normalization, it is fit on the trained subsample and then applied to the validation and to the test sample. So basically, on the train, it is usually fit transform, and then on the test, it is only transform. Why? Because once again, the parameters of normalization and scaling is something that affects the performance strongly, and something that can affect whether your model pays close attention to certain parts of the data set. So in general, you want, when you are applying your model in the real life scenario, you do not have the opportunity to retrain your model with this new data. So you have to rely only on the fit parameters, only on the scale parameters that you extracted from the trained sample. In a good scenario, when for example, ranges of the features and distribution of the features is the same for the train and test sample, it won't make any difference. But if the variance of your data set is high, then you selected 20% of the data, and this 20% turned out that the 3 outliers that are in there, that they ended up exactly in this test sample. This is possible, and your model have to be robust to this kind of outlier values. Another method of dealing with this, in cases when you really cannot, if the data set is small, or if you have high class and balanced, and you are interested in the one class that is present only in tiny quantities, one thing that you can do is k-fold cross-validation. So basically, test sample is still remains somewhere untouched, but instead of using a validation sample, you are splitting your train data set. So the split is 80 to 20, and you are splitting your train data into several chunks. 5, 10 doesn't matter. Matters, but depends on the size of your data set. And then you are running your model the number of chunks. So if number of chunks is n, then you are running your model n times. And in each run, you are retaining one of the chunks of this data set. So you are training on the remaining data and then validating on this one remaining chunks. And then you are averaging the performance. So for small data sets or for data sets with high variance, this is usually a good thing. Yes. Why all those bells and whistles? Because in real life, we are concerned not only with model performance, not only with the number of correct answers, but also with how well it generalizes to other cases and whether it is going to produce complete garbage if some small things are going to change in the data. So once again, an example. You trained your algorithm on the X-ray images obtained with one machine, and then a hospital tries to apply it on the X-ray images taken with another machine. In real life, probably it will ruin your analysis completely. It's like real life cases. And there are separate things, like in this case, usually it has to be tested on this new data, and maybe the model has to be adjusted. Something like transfer learning is applied. So like the model is trained first on one data set and then fine-tuned on another. But basically, you are interested in evaluating not only how precise your model, but also how reliable it is. This is why there is a number of different statistics that are used for evaluating the model performance. And this is why we are usually doing some averaging over multiple runs of the model. Yes, machine learning, as I already said, machine learning are interpolators and not extrapolators. Generally, you always have to check whether the parameter space, so if we are talking about two-dimensional case, essentially the distribution of the features, if it is the same for your train and test data set, or broadly speaking, with your train data set, between the train data set and the data that are actually coming to you in real life. If there is a difference, it is some kind of shift, it is usually called distribution shift, sometimes domain shift. So if there is a shift, your model generally is expected to start performing worse. So in this case, it means that you have to adjust the model. It's not like the model is bad. when we're talking about metrics that we use for evaluating the model performance, there are different metrics depending on whether we are solving classification task or a regression task. So a reminder, classification task is when we have categorical labels. So for example, classes Asian elephants, African aliens, 0 and 1. And then the predictions are also binary. So then we have to calculate the number of coinciding predictions and the number of false positives and false negatives. So false positives, false negatives, I mean, it depends on whether which label you adjust. The meaning of their meaning more or less the same. It is the cases when the predicted label does not coincide with the real label. So your ideal case is when you have, like if you have a total number of objects of data points 100, then you have, then you want to have all these objects concentrated to be either true negatives or true positives. This is ideal case, which in real world never happens. But okay, these 4 numbers, okay, they work and you can see them in papers a lot, but it would be nice to understand, okay, what if we have a strong class imbalance? Then this kind of table is not very informative intuitively because, okay, let's say we have out of 100 examples, we have only 3 false positives. Is it good or bad? I mean, normally, okay, 3 out of 100, this is perfect. But if we are specifically interested in class 0, and if the total number of objects of class 0 is 5, then 3 false positives means that you have 50% contamination. Is it good for you? I mean, depends on the task, because for some problems it is better to get more false positives, but kind of not miss a single thing as a false negative. For example, if it is early prediction of some really serious disease, then yeah, okay, let us get more false positives. Yes, we will scare some people. Yes, we will run some additional checks, but at least people will live longer, especially if there is an early treatment for this kind of disease. In some cases, we are okay with losing some of the objects, but please don't give us a ton of false positives. So for example, if we are just interested in finding some objects of this class to do more observations, but we do not expect to find all of them because for some reason we know that this is not possible, then it is a different case and different metrics values. So usually there is a combination of these true positives, false negatives, a combination into several metrics. So common ones are precision, recall, and F1. F1 is kind of a harmonic, balanced combination of the precision and recall. Precision is the one that evaluates how many of real true positives values in relations to the true positives and false positives. So basically how clean in the sample that your predictor is giving you. And recall works a little bit different. It indicates how many, it is a metric to figure out how many real interesting objects got missed, because it is the ratio of true positives to the sum of true positives and false negatives. So essentially all of the objects of this class. And when we are comparing the models, one of common methods that can be used just, kind of for evaluating whether your model is fine and for selecting whether there is a point at which the model performs best is so-called ROC curve. Do I have it? Yes. So a ROC curve is receiver operate. It is ROC curve. Everyone knows it like that. And it is basically plotting of true positives fraction from the false positive fraction. So we have false positives on the x-axis. So this is the number of objects that got falsely classified as class 1, let's say. And true positives is on the y-axis. So what we want to do in real life. We want to have as low false positive rate as possible. We don't want to have any contaminations, and we want to have as high true positive rate as possible. So the perfect ROC curve would be just like ideal square thing. I mean, we would get early all the real objects, and we would have no contamination. In reality, you are going to get something in between. So it is, once again, it is useful to just do a visual inspection, but sometimes we also talk about area under the curve. So basically, we are saying that, fine, we want to figure out if we are accepting certain threshold of false positives, how many true positives we are going to catch. And this area under the curve, it's like kind of simple metric to evaluate whether the model is good or bad. Now, in practice, all those metrics, I mean, generally everything that I mentioned in this lecture, if it is mentioned in the lecture, then it can be done in Python with one-liner. So, for example, for this kind of confusion of this is classification reports. For these metrics, you just do import sklearn metrics and you just print this table, and here it is. So if you have multi-class problems, so in these cases 5 classes, you get right away the information about precision for these classes, recall, F1 score, and support. So support is the total number of objects with this class in the data set. It also helps you to evaluate sometimes. So if you have low support and the low result for this kind of class, then okay, probably we don't have enough a number of objects to learn this class, or maybe the intrinsic variance is so high that the algorithm cannot catch all the distinctive features of this class. And then there is the average statistics. Similarly, confusion matrix, so true positives and predicted positives and true positives, you are going to have it like this. This one is a normalized matrix, so it is normalized to 1, but you can also have it in like with simple numbers. Okay. When we are talking about classification problem, then it is comparing the predictions with the real values, and it is pretty simple. It's 0, 1, or basically the class should be equal one another. What about regression task? So once again, regression is when we are trying not to predict a categorical value, but to predict a numerical value. So for example, we are trying to predict what the temperature is going to be in Aidovщина in 3 days. It is not going to be 0 or 1. It is going to be some value between 0 and 30, minus 20 and 30. So for this kind of problems, we need different metrics, and 2 most common are mean absolute error and RMSE, so root mean square error. The latter is used often when you have some extreme values because it is less sensitive to outliers. But you can recall vaguely that actually the same things we heard about them during the previous lectures, that those things can be used as loss functions. So what is the difference? Is it the same? Are they always the same? Should be the same? No. So the thing is that loss function is the function that is used for evaluating the error and propagating it back through the algorithm. One of the important things about these functions is they should be differentiable. So you remember linear algebra that was shown here. So, okay, there is some mathematical properties. Another demand is actually that it should be fairly easily calculable because, I mean, it's not horribly crucial, but if it takes a long time to calculate this error, then okay, your algorithm is going to work really slow. Now, the metrics functions, their function is different. No one cares whether they are differential or not. The idea of this function is that they have to be understandable by human. This is the type of things that we put in the paper that we use to figure out whether our predictor is good or bad. So we should understand what they mean, and they should have some meaning in terms of the problems that we are trying to solve, which means that not always these simple metrics are the good ones, because sometimes your problem doesn't care about these absolute linear distances. One example is, for example, measuring the distance on a grid. So, for example, in a city, when you are moving from here to, I don't know, to the Letaliще on the other side of Aidovchina, when you are trying to estimate how much time it will take you to get from here to there, you are not thinking about a straight line. You are thinking, okay, I have to go on this street, then this street, then this street. So basically, your movements are limited. Another example is chess. So, for example, how many moves of the knight or of a is horse the right name for the chess piece in English? Okay, good. I never read anything on chess in English. Okay, so how many movements will it take to move for a horse from one position to another? You cannot just go directly. Like Euclidean distance doesn't make sense. In these cases, you need some specific metric. So, for example, Manhattan metric, which is very convenient because it kind of easily understandable. It is how many movements along each axis do you need to make to get from one point to another point. So it is really native metric for moving in a city with a dense building grid. But not only, because the same metric turns out to be very useful, for example, when people are studying languages and trying to figure out how many replacement of single letters are needed to go from one word in some long dead language to another word in a modern language. So sometimes you use some fancy metrics, and sometimes you are writing your own, and sometimes you are even writing your own loss metrics. Not commonly, but it happens. Another nuance, once again, numbers do lie. So if you report a single performance value, sometimes it is completely non-informative. What we are usually doing is, once again, we are using plots. So residual plots are common. Let's say we have a distribution along certain feature, like physically meaningful feature, and we want to see whether the errors of our algorithms are uniform or whether they are stronger, maybe on the tail of the distribution, or maybe in the part of the distribution where measurement errors are large. And then it is not on machine learning algorithm, it is on the measurement errors. You have to get better measurements, sorry. So residual plots and binned plots along certain physical axes is something to use and to have a look at. In principle, you can derive some modified metrics based on the binned residual. So, for example, standard deviation of the residual in bins. You can do that. But yeah, in most cases, it's easier to look at the plot. And yes, third metric and final two slides, let's go through them because they're really, really short. Reproducibility. Machine learning is really sensitive to tiny changes of everything, which is why you have to use fixed random things. So this usually random seed 42, this is something to use, and this is something to write down. Another thing is you have to document things, and no one is doing this, at least not in academia, because in industry, in machine learning applications, you have no choice. But generally, it is very good practice to start a config file or start a log file and write down like automatically in your script, put several lines to put the information about parameters, about random seeds, and about the splits of the data set. Also about the pre-processing steps, ideally with, once again, with the parameters that you used for the pre-processing. There are libraries and tools for doing this automatically. Some of them are integrated in the Python libraries that you probably use, so sklearn, TensorFlow, Keras, they all have these kind of things. Sometimes they are standalone as ML4, something else. You're not going to do that, I know that, but at least one thing that I strongly am asking to do you to do, please at least use Git and please write Git commits reasonably. This is, I know that this is kind of a lost war, but please, 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 you will be grateful and everyone around you will be grateful at some point. And just as a final note, how it is usually happening. So when you are getting the data, you are doing exploratory data analysis, you are figuring out what are the issues with the data. Then you do the cleaning. Now, depending on the machine learning setup, if it is like simple setup, then you usually go to the feature engineering, you transform things around, then you are splitting things, and then you are training stuff and rinse, repeat several times. If it is large setup, big data sets, image-based data sets, which you cannot load at one go into your memory, into the memory of, I mean, you cannot load it into your memory unless you are ChatGPT. But if it does not fit in the memory of your laptop, or if it does not fit in the memory of the GPU, you are doing this in batches. So you are setting up some data loader, you read things in batches. So usually the exploratory data analysis and cleaning is done on the whole data set separately. But then feature engineering depends, because at this point, feature engineering sometimes turns into so-called data augmentation. So essentially, you're not just creating new features, but you are even creating the new data points by changing a little bit already existing and by enlarging the sample of your training. So something that is typically done for image-based, for any machine learning done with images. And then these bits of the data, then they're moved throughout this pipeline. And in reality, it is a good idea to use some pre-existing tools, pipeline, something like that, either if you are doing simple machine learning as sklearn, or if something like image-based, then TensorFlow, Keras, PyTorch, whatever you are using. I think this is it, which is very lucky because I see that some people are already subtly falling asleep. I apologize for that. It is a long lecture to listen when someone is speaking monotonically and doesn't even write on the blackboard. We still have half an hour, so I think we should try to at least load the demo and make sure that it can be run on the Colab, because it runs for me, but it's probably not going to run for at least some of you. And this is going to be, we will try to play with it, and this is going to be the starting point during the next lecture, because next lecture will rely on coding a lot. So let me figure out how to share the link to the notebook with you, and then we will try to experiment with it. I think one of the simplest things I can do is just to try to send the link to you through the email. You have not got the email from Gabi. And you. Is there anyone who didn't get the reminder about this lecture from Gabriela Zakaris, like today or yesterday?
Yeah, I did, but I'm just sitting. I want to format it.
Okay.
But I would like to receive the.
Okay. Let me. Okay. Just sitting. Cool.
I mean, not on.
True. This is important. Okay.
Never see those.
Hmm. Okay, probably easier to do it through GitHub. Sorry. Bless you. I think that what I am going to do, I will going to make a public repository, and then you will just copy the link from, like, type it from the screen. You won't need GitHub for that. It's going to be fine. So, out of curiosity, those who ever used Google Colab, raise your hands. Google Colab. Google Colab?
Yeah.
Okay. How many of you are using Jupyter notebooks on your laptops? What are everyone else doing? No, no. I mean, okay, okay. This is fine. So VS Code. VS Code. Okay, quick survey. What kind of coding do you usually do? Whether it is on Python and in which IDE, from right to left? Okay. Okay, cool. What do you use this Fortran? Okay. Uh, Once again, sorry. Okay, R. Okay. Okay. Which ID? Which integrated development program? TXT and run through command line. Okay. You? Okay. Okay. Uh, Python VS Code.
Mostly Python, Fortran, and I use Sublime Text.
Okay. Jupyter Notebook. Okay. Okay. What do you usually use? Okay. So mostly theory. We should have done this poll before we started these lectures. And we were actually talking about it, but then everyone was super busy. In TXT? Okay. Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, we really should have asked this before. All right. Let me check that this is public, and we will walk through it together, guys. Um, okay, public. So let's see if it actually works. Let me share my screen for a second again. And let me, okay, increasing this doesn't, okay. So you want to go to GitHub and you want to type, let me copy this to the, actually, I'm doing a stupid thing. Let me do moderately less stupid thing. And put it on a new, come on, wake up. Slower than me. So when you manage to type this correctly, I'm going to give you like 30 seconds and then I will ask you to raise your hands so that we were all on the same page. Yes. For everyone else to fall asleep who's still awake. Okay, who managed to see something like this? No laptop. Okay. Okay, let's assume that everyone. So what you want to do, there is this green button code. If you click on it and if I remove this, you can do, okay, sorry. If you click on this code, you can download zip. If you never used Git, this is the easiest thing you can do. Okay. I will put it in a separate folder. you will extract zip, and then in this folder there will be two files, one Jupyter Notebook and one CSV. So for those who are using Jupyter Notebooks, you know what to do. Open it in whatever you feel comfortable with. I mean, I hope that you know how to create virtual environment as well, because if we try to walk through this, it's probably going to be problematic. The next step is going to be, for those who do not use anything notebook related, is to use, sorry? Yes. So one is Jupyter Notebook, IPEN-B, and another is, do I still share the screen? Yes. So this corrupt Wine lecture version, this is a Jupyter Notebook. Wine corrupted is just the file for the playing with things. Can I do? No, this is not the idea. Okay, open Colab. Okay, so if you type Google Colab, you will sooner or later get to this link, colab.google. And then you can click on Open Colab, top right corner. And then you are going to end up on a... Good question. I mean, I'm signed by default. Try it without it. I mean, you can. Don't see any downsides to it. And then you should look for an opportunity to upload your Jupyter Notebook. I mean, for me, it just opened this window and there is upload option. Yes. The one that is IPEN-B. And now I have 3 folders with almost the same names. And which one? Okay, it doesn't matter. Hallelujah. Do you think I eat from here? Yes. Okay, so please raise your hands who managed to open a notebook somewhere Jupyter Notebook. Yeah? No? Okay, 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 okay. The next challenge is going to be to load the data that we need. So you should look for files. And I don't remember how to do it.
You mean why corrupt?
Yes, I think. Yes, we can try to do this. So basically, there is this folder icon, second from the bottom, and you need to upload this wine corrupt CSV file. Yes, these ones will be deleted when the runtime ended, but we do not care about that. So while it is loading, fair warning, I do not remember well. So for me, it was sometimes an issue that it was taken some time to register in the file system after it was loaded, before it was visible in the Jupyter Notebooks. Hopefully it will take less than, let's say, a minute. While it is loading, let's look at the structure of this notebook. So the first scary cell is probably going to be especially scary for people who do not do Python, because there is a lot of imports. Since we have some people that do not work with Python, I will briefly walk you through this. So basically, Python lives on using already existing libraries. So some people already wrote something for machine learning, for all kinds of plots, for all kinds of processing, CSV files, TXT files, Pico files, some complex tabular formats, your favorite format from your favorite gene sequencing something, it is there. Unless it is something that you invented, someone already wrote a library for dealing with it. This is why we have so many things imported here. So import NumPy S and P means we are connecting a library NumPy written by other people, and we give it short name NP. When we are loading this library, why we are loading it? Because it is one of the biggest, most known and widely used libraries in Python for working with simple arrays. So if you have a matrix with numbers, sometimes with string information, it is also fine, you're going to use NumPy. Pandas is kind of an evolution of this thing. Pandas gives you much prettier tables and has additional functionality, for example, for automatically calculating all kinds of weird statistics per column, per row, per whole table, per some selection of the table, whatever you like. But the downside is it is noticeably slower. So NumPy on the back end uses C++ and vectorizes stuff in the most fantastic ways. So something that is written smartly on NumPy can work 10 times faster than in Pandas, sometimes more faster. But for our dataset, doesn't matter much. Now, from sklearn is a big library for all kinds of machine learning stuff. And here we already have that there are some built-in datasets, LoadVine. So this is the dataset that I used as a basis for creating this Vine corrupted dataset. So why did I create our own dataset? Because LoadVine, when I tried to just apply some exploratory data analysis and machine learning on it, it turned out so good that it was always predicting the right values, even if I use really dumb machine learning model, because it is a very simple toy dataset. So I had to artificially ruin this dataset for you so that you had something to actually do. But I'm keeping this function because in case you want to compare the original and modified dataset and figure out how exactly I ruined your life, well, you can do it using this function. Model selection. So this is where we import this train test split that we were talking about earlier. What is good? I mean, you can do it by yourself, but what is good by this function? And once again, a lot of people never used Python, so I'm probably losing you, and I'm sorry. What is good about this function is that you can pass it a chunk of data sets, and it will split them all in the same way in the test and train data sets. Now, split in the same way, what do I mean? I mean, okay. In the last 15 minutes, I will use a cranion. When you have a data set, some table essentially, when you are trying to split it 80-20%, one thing you can do, you can take first 80% and then last 20%. Horrible solution. What if you already have ordered data set with all classes 1 located here? I mean, okay, try to train your model when your trained data set has only 1 class. What you should do, you should take random rows from here. This is where this fixate or write down your random seeds comes from. So you have to take random rows, but you have to remember which random rows you took. And if you have imbalanced data set, you have also to take them in such a way that in both train and test data set, you had the same balance between classes. So the number of zeros, let's say here you have 70% class 0 and 30% class 1. The same balance you want it in your test data set. So these kind of nuances, you can ensure them manually, or you can once again look for a library that was already written for dealing with this kind of stuff. And surprise, there is such library, and you can do this without thinking about all those details using test train split from sklearn. Then we have some additional things to import. So data imputation, as I was already talking about. Preprocessing standard scalar. So this is the, once again, scaling that we were talking about. So min, max, and normalization. Logistic regression is one of the machine learning models. You can use something else like random forest. I took logistic regression because it is a very simple model. And once again, this data set is so simple and so ridiculously toy that it will give you fantastic performance on everything. This is pipeline, which I mentioned on the last slide, but chances are we are never going to get there because we won't have time. And a bunch of metrics to learn. So this is classification, report confusion matrix, and these scores. Once again, they were mentioned on the slides, but until you play with them with your hands, you won't probably understand anything. So hopefully the data set already loaded and registered, and I will be able to load it properly. But first we will have to install some things. Unless Google Co-op Google Co-op takes care of this automatically. So I wonder whether it makes sense to say a few words about environments. Probably not. Yes. Yes. Okay. So let's just quickly go through the what is going on, and then you will be able to play it with it by yourself. So here we are setting these random seeds that will determine which random rows will be taken when you are doing the split, which random numbers are going to be assigned to the model weights if we are doing something with the weights, stuff like this. Now we want to read this data set, and it managed to do it normally. So we can, okay, whatever. They realized that this is not a good idea. So first section, what generally I was thinking you, and this is the wrong level. Okay. Let me do this. Okay. Still not. So I think we should have 3 sections here. First section is about exploratory data analysis. So here you have to try to do this to get these basic statistical numbers that we were talking about. Once again, since it is something which has an article on Wikipedia, and since it is something about you hear about an introduction during an introductory lecture, there is a function that does it in one line for you. So you can try this kind of function. I'm not going to do it. If you have computers, you will try it by yourself. Then what I want you to do is to have a look at the distributions and try to identify which features have those problems about which we were talking about. So is there some feature that has a long tail? What is the shape of this distribution, and how would you scale it? Is it something that is this long tail something that should be cut off, or maybe it is something that should be modified with log transform? So you have to decide it. Is there some kind of feature that has outliers? How many of those outliers are there? Do you want to keep them? Do you want to replace them with some number? Do you want to maybe once again rescale something, this feature in such a way that it was compressing this whole range into 0 to 1? So this is for you to investigate. Correlation matrix. So once again, have a look at it. And a reminder, I mean, okay, you read it by yourself. I shouldn't just simplify your life that much. The next section is to figure out, okay, if we leave this data set as it is, and if we apply, so we are removing the target column. I mean, if you never done machine learning, you should just comment this line. So put a hashtag first and see how it affects your performance of the model. So you are an idea. So you are doing this train test split. Once again, we are passing the features, we are passing the target columns, and then we are getting this accurate, reasonable split between test and train data set. And then we are once again using this pipeline thing, and we are given it a chain of steps that we mentioned on the last slide. So first of all, we are imputing things if there are nonce. Then we are doing the standard scalar, and then we are doing the logistic regression. Logistic regression is this machine learning algorithm. So you are checking the performance of the model. Pay attention that here we are already doing the scalar. What if we remove this line? How does it affect the performance? So before doing this, look at these distributions and try to figure out if there are features that have weird distributions that will be ruining things if you do not scale them. Simple computer, try to remove them and see if you had nonce, and you had nonce in this data set, then how your algorithm is going to behave if you keep this nonce there. Get the results. So here are the main statistics that we mentioned and the classification report. So it is going to be the table similar to the one I showed somewhere here. This is what you should get. Not exactly those numbers, because this I took from an astronomical example from my work. Confusion matrix. So something fancy like this, you are also going to get it here. Yeah. Okay. Basically, this is the last section. So time for question in a few minutes. Then basically the section for you to experiment. You will find some issues in this data set. I mean, I carefully ruined it for you. So your task is to fix those issues one by one and basically copy those cells and try to re-execute the machine learning algorithm and see how it affects the performance. Now, once again, since dataset is ridiculously simple, the performance isn't going to improve much because it's going to be pretty good from the beginning. But it has to change and it has to improve. So for you, task for you, I should have probably written what is your target performance, but I forgot about it. So yeah, this is the task for you. Identify the issues, fix them, and see how it affects the performance. Question. Ilya? What exactly doesn't work? Tell me what is the issue. We still have 10 minutes. I'm going to annoy you for the rest of the 10 minutes. Sorry.
Yeah, gives me this.
Okay. Yes, because you didn't load the data set. So see what is okay. So no such file or directory.
Okay, but I think that we're here.
No, this one, yes. And then find corrupted.
Okay, I see.
Yes, and then wait for 30 seconds because I mean it is already loaded, so you can try to execute it.
I see.
And it works.
Okay.
Okay.
Then again.
Yeah. Yep.
How to log the data?
Okay. So, yes. So can you scroll down?
Here. Okay.
You have a lot of stuff here, but all right. Click on this load button. Nope. This is refresh. Load. Upload.
Sorry.
Yep. Wine corrupted. So basically, this is the data set that we are going to use. The question is that I see a lot of folders here. I'm not sure why. Maybe it will save it somewhere where it won't see it by default, but then you can do the right click and copy the path.
Right click.
Try this and then we'll see. Okay. So, out of curiosity, who actually looks at this Jupyter notebook right now? Who is actually looking at this Jupyter notebook right now? Okay, so I'm not trying to annoy you. I'm basically saying that if you want, you can move closer and we can look at it all together. So I will be running between you. Or if you don't want, I don't want to annoy you. This is basically everything that I wanted to tell. So this is time for questions and looking at these things interactively. So your choice whether you want to continue sitting and asking me questions or tell, thank you, Alex, peace off. Questions?
What means support?
Support total number of objects belonging to this class. Like the support of these numbers, statistical numbers that you see, is 600 of data points that belong to this class. They all support these statistics. So you have a data set of 100 objects. Out of them, 30 belong to class Asian elephant and 70 to class African elephant. For the African elephant, you got some performance statistics like purity, something. And the support for them is 70. 70 objects, 70 African elephants. Not clear. Not clear. Okay. So basically, okay, let's go from another side. Every statistical value is every statistical quantity is the most reliable when you have a lot of objects in the sample for which it is calculated. So for example, if you have only like 3 or 5 objects, and when you try to calculate the median, I mean, you will get some value, but 5 objects is really small sample. I mean, maybe they are randomly gotten from this side of the audience, and maybe all of these 5 people turn out to be from Scandinavia. It does not mean that the median value for the geographical country of origin is Scandinavia. It means that we had really small sample. So support for this sample is 5, which is very low.
So if I sum this number of
Exactly. Yes, it's the size of the data set. Questions more? If anyone on Zoom not asleep, feel free to chime in.
I remember precision recall, but if one score,
F1 is, it is a formula. It is 2 precision multiplied recall divided. So how is it called? Harmonic median or something. So basically it's the combination. Yeah. What do you do with it? So precision and recall separately, they are sensitive to either missed true values or to the contaminations. This one is kind of the average, but that is less sensitive to low numbers. So it is a little bit more robust if you have, for example, strong class imbalance or strong number of missed objects or a lot of missed objects. So normally, I mean, if you want to have it's not straightforward interpretation, but it is kind of the median value between them.
median value, so it's for
More reliable than just summing and dividing by 2. Yes. Why do you want it? Or what? F1, yes. Precision and recall, yes. No, wait. Let me think about. I have to look at the equation, but I think yes. But I think so. So the thing is that I personally usually look at the confusion matrix themselves. So this is why I have decent understanding of F1, decent understanding of, for example, regression errors, but recall and precision, I can lie. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So one of the things is confusion matrix to be better, but also you have some single number statistics. You have F1 score and you have something else there. So you can also use them. F1 is your like primary target. Yeah. But actually keep an eye on other things because they're sensitive to different types of errors. So try to, for example, fix one of the issues and see whether it improves more the precision or the recall. Yep. We want to move it and just make distribution. This is for you to experiment with. But yeah, removing it like kind of an obvious thing. Change the data. Yep. 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 Okay. If people still resigned to stay for extra 7 minutes, let me see that I can click through it all without errors. Mm. Yes. Are you kidding me? Okay, so this is not like an official home task because I'm not the final evaluator. But the thing is that you are going to have the final project, doing something on your data set. I mean, at least if you want to get the credits. So this kind of thing is going to be part of it because this is what you should start with. You should look at your data set. You should figure out what are the problems. If it is real life data set, you will have missing values. You will have some crazy values that do not make sense. So you will have to process it with this. So I do not expect you to bring me anything like just please give me a grade, but checking out whether you can improve things, and then optionally, if you are okay with it, showing it to me and asking, have I found everything? Any idea what else can I find? Then you're welcome to do it. Realistically, if you get some improvement of your machine learning algorithm after fixing some errors, well, consider that you have done something. You can write a paper. Okay, so let's call it a day. Thank you for the lecture. Thank you for showing up. For example, you want to experience the life of let's go.